it's actually very appropriate that we follow the previous presentation, because we kind of feel that although we didn't participate in the research, there are a lot of parallels with our own experience from starting. There's two of us deliberately. I'm here, I suppose, speaking as a business owner, as an SME owner, quite small. We started out as 2 people and are now working as a group of 12. So I'm an architect in private practice for longer than I would care to remember, working mostly in public procurement, and as I said, I'm here thinking about this in terms of how you implement some of these strategies and requirements and pressures that come on a small architectural practice with the implementation of BIM. And my colleague Yu is essentially bringing some of that technical expertise and that technical experience from an international context where he has had the benefit of working in larger organizations. The nature of our practice is we're based in Dublin. We're only about 7 years old. We came out of the last recession, and what we're trying to do is maybe share with you some of our how-tos. We would take an awful lot of what has just been described as extremely valid and very much the way to go forward. But we have found that the actual implementation in small business, where you only have a certain number of people, as I say, starting with 2, maybe becoming 4, and eventually, as the work demands, becoming big enough to start having teams and allocated roles. And we have found that it's not just about the technology. It's not just about the kit or the softwares. An awful lot of what we have found is about working with our staff and giving them the headroom to explore and to try and find ways that fit our client group. So what we're going to talk about is the 3 phases that we experienced very quickly. Where we started out as a brand new company and what that allowed us to do. Rather than having to deal with a lot of change, we were able to start from afresh. Yu is going to talk about where we are now and the systems that we're using, what we feel we can buy into and what we have had to just put aside because we don't have the people or the resources or the money or the time to adopt with surety. And then we're going to talk about what we're trying to get out of it, where we might go over the next number of years, in the hope that this, the work we've done over the last 5 years puts us in a slightly more assured position so that we can compete. So our practice started in 2012. We started as a brand new business. Previous business didn't survive. And we had a couple, and when I say a couple, I mean 2 transitional projects. So we had an opportunity to make a very clean jump to a new process. So rather than repurchasing the old systems and continuing with the systems that we had, we made the decision to look into seeing could we deliver these projects from the get-go, starting to adopt this new method of preparing documentation, preparing drawings, exploring modelling. And one of the things that we really that informed that decision was understanding who we were going to be working with. We very much did not want to go down the route of single houses or extensions. We wanted to continue the hope that we would start to get public work, public housing, schools, medical, the stuff that is the bread and butter of small practice. I'm not talking about airports or highly complex pharma. We're not there yet. But we also had to recognize what our partner consultants, who we were going to be working with, who did survive, our engineers, the QSs, they're already heavily invested in drawing environments, information environments. We went with the Autodesk, which was a big switch for us because we had been working in a different environment. We went into the Autodesk family because we found and felt that they had evidence that there was a commitment to the Irish market. We weren't initially looking at the UK market or the European market or the world market. We wanted support that we could get for a small Irish market. and the opportunity cost was very low for us to start. So what worked and what didn't for us in that very early start? The BIM enabling processes kind of did work for us. We learned these new tools, we took training, we availed of some of the supports that were available in 2012, 2013. We were relearning how to draw because the directors were back on the tools. We were having to do the work ourselves. We decided to do our very best to access the graduates that were starting to become available in 2012, 2013, because the first tranche of DIT, as was, graduates had gone through their course never having done any CAD, but were being brought through the modelling process and the briefing about what BIM was going to be. And this was of huge value to us. We also needed to bring our partner consultants with us. If we were working with larger businesses, they would have entrenched processes. If we were working with much smaller businesses, we were possibly asking them to commit to an investment at the same time. The implementation of BIM as a process we found quite difficult and still continue to find difficult. Our client base were not asking for it. They didn't understand what it was. They didn't even know what it was. And we're talking about public bodies, we're talking about approved housing parties, we're talking about central government departments. They kind of knew, but they weren't there ready to procure with it yet. The immediate attempt, and we tried this, to shape quite large processes within a small project environment didn't work for us. We did seek consultation from a BIM consultant. They did come in and they did talk to us about the business goals and how we would set up our processes. But they were always coming from the idea that they were talking to a bigger company than we were. There were 3 of us, and we were working on very small projects. And suddenly we had this layer of processes that our clients didn't need, and we didn't have the resource to commit to for these small projects. And we had potentially then, in relation to the larger contractors or partner consultants, we might have had an over-reliance on their legacy and established systems. So that has taken us, in an iterative way, a number of years to get used to. And we can only imagine that for businesses at 3, 4, 5 persons, it still remains an issue. So where we are at the moment is something that's quite similar to the slide that you just saw in the last presentation. It's an integration of the people that you have and the processes that you're using. And the people we keep finding is the most important part of it. And my role as a manager stroke a business owner is really to let those new skills do their job. And the background concerns that I would have, for example, is not so much that they can't do the job, it's the critical analysis. It's not just asking them, can you do that? It's asking, do you know why you're doing it? And that's really important from a risk point of view, because you can produce a beautiful drawing that is just wrong. And that's really, really important to watch for. So training and the skills that they have, but also the critical awareness of what it is they're drawing, what it is they're modeling, what it is they're writing is very, very important. So, you came on board a year and a half ago and brought a kind of an experience and the beginnings of a rigor that we're still starting to apply to our processes. So he's going to take you to how we're doing the bits that we're doing in our office now.
Thank you, Ciaran. I'm here to talk about the information management and the standardization, how our information is stored, how do we check those, and how do we share them, and how do we implement the standardization that information is addressed. And also going to talk about the model structure and its processes based on the project brief. And we're also introducing a new process called ETI, which we'll address in the later slides. Even though I'm coming down from a larger organization previously, but our experience in the larger organization process, it won't fit into a small company. So we had to go through with the management to actually retain the process, what they try to achieve. Then we develop the new process to adopt their needs. So how our information is stored. We don't have any complex CDE in our office. We have a CDE, we're going to show a bit later, but traditionally in our internal folder structure, we're using a traditional folder structures. It retain within the practice. We don't share on the cloud. We don't put on the cloud due to security reasons. And it's flexible for the projects. And whichever project we do for small interior fitting out all the way to school or larger projects, it's all live in our server. We don't share that online unless necessary to share it with the other external consultants. So when I come into the company, I look at this existing folder structure. It's quite complex. If you can see, they have a number of folders, and I find the people in the company, they don't know where to put that information into. So we need to strip back and tell them, this is too complex. We actually need to retain how our information is stored. So we developed new folder structures. It's still living in our server. This is more simplified, and it's actually tied back into our contracts. What I mean by that, if you're looking at the stage and D, C and D, which is the work stage, is based on your contract. Your contract will state you have a preliminary, you have all the way, you have stage 1 or stage 2 deliverable, you all live in there, and BIM folder will be all the collaboration and modeling happening. And the rest is just building control and health and safety. It's very simple, and it bring this folder structure across all projects is all the same. So there's no, when our user go to a particular folder, they will know exactly where to get the information from. So how do we verify and check the people put the files into a right location or even comply with the naming conventions? We're using a command line script, very simple. So basically, a command line script is basically, it direct the command line into a particular project folder and extract the information from that. And it produce a text file like this. So if I show this to Ciaran, he will know exactly what kind of information are in there, whether people are comply or follow the naming convention in the office, and immediately have that context. Yes, it's still kind of manual check, but it's sufficient for the smaller company to do so. So how our information is shared to external, so-called checking. We're using BIM 360 document management. I'm pretty sure everyone knows what BIM 360 is now, so I'm not going to drill down too much detail on those. We use them is because it's cost effective. It's included in our software package. We utilize them. And we also can track the transmitter, what information we've been sending out. Additionally, it opened up to a variety of the plugin and add-in, which is going to showcase later on. So we also implement our 3-step approval before we actually issue any information out. So the first will be project BIM lead in the project to check the information whether it's comply with our internal conventions. Secondly, we'll go down to architect's design lead to review the design of the building. Thirdly, before we share out, the directors will review it before giving us a permission to share out the information. So we have the control of the information flow before actually going out to the company. So how our information are standardized? This is quite basic, simple. We develop in-house on the BIM execution plan now, but I have the template there, so if you guys to use that, that would be great. But at the time we developed this in-house, we don't have any II template to rely on. And we also develop a model development specification, which means we tell our discipline or other discipline, structure or MEP, tell them how they should be modeling within the modeling world. I actually have a very experience with the structural engineer or mechanical engineer. They were modeling from ground floor all the way to 10th floor in one column. That's not the way to do it. So we need to specify, tell them how to model, for example, from first floor to second floor, you break down the columns. And we also have model element list requirement, which is contain all our data information. So if you have the door or windows, you will have the height, you will specify in that content, so we can control the information, what's going in and what's going out. We also have the in-house standard and the guideline. Now, when you're doing an in-house guideline and standard, don't produce 10 copies and with 100 pages on the guideline, because people are not going to read them. Our naming convention is only 10 pages. Our step-by-step guideline only 5 pages. People will read them. It's simple. You give them step-by-step guideline. They will just read them, 2 or 3 pages. It won't take them 2 minutes to complete. And we're not in the unit class information yet, but we already produced a model content requirement. If in the future, if the client requests it, we can provide that kind of information in our model. So how our model information is structured. So you see this graph is a template that we're using for all the projects. So before we go into this, we need to identify the project brief. What's the project about? Do we need to segregate a different building or different zoning? All this need to break it down into individual model. And we are also getting information from surveyor to feed into our model and to get the true coordinates set out in a common model environment. We share that common model environment to the rest of discipline. They will acquire the coordinates from the model, so we all sync up in our model. So when we share our model to other discipline, they will just can link in and use the shared coordinates, everything will be in place. There's no manual moving around, all the information will be intact based on the survey drawings. And this workflow is not just in Autodesk. It can go to any other platform. It works in other platform because I used this on the Bentley MicroStation project before. So coming next is everyone know early contract involvement. What's the other term?
Yeah, well, it's partnership contracting. The previous couple of talks with public procurement discussed this in some detail, and it's increasing importance in working in the public works environment, and it's becoming a pinch point in terms of the ability to take BIM on to its implementation on to the next stage. So, you know, we've worked with this before, and it's a really important factor, but we've paraphrased it a little.
So, but during the design stage, we also forgot to bring in the technologies on board early. Traditionally, in architecture office, the architects will just work with the director in the very early concept stage and go and do their modeling beginning. There's no control environment there. There's no modeling information setting up. And the technology often bring in halfway of the project, say, this is the model, please develop this to a certain standard for planning or certain standard for tender. That's not the way we think it should be working. We need to bring the technology at the earliest stage together with the project architects or the lead architects to let the technology know this is what the project is about. So the technologists can go out and sell the modeling information. They can request the information from various disciplines. What's the exchange format during the concept stage? Do we need to do that? This all can be identified in the execution plan. And technologists now have a multiple role in the small medium practice. Essentially, they are replacing the project information management in our company, the BIM manager, the BIM coordinator. They have multiple roles in our company. So additionally, we also have a sub-process implement into earliest design stage. It's a project kickoff sessions. Now this is, to us, is a must because when you bring a people on board, they need to know what's going on. And also we have a regularly stand-up meeting. Essentially, stand-up meeting is actually coming from the IT industry when they're doing the coding or programming on the daily basis. So in this instance, we bring the architects in. Architects will say, right, today you should focus on zone 1, you should focus on zone 2. We meet up tomorrow morning. If any question, we ask about. So it's only 5-10 minutes work in the morning. And it actually increased our productivity for that day quite significantly. Now, BIM maturity. We're really pushing in, we really put our time and resources into to implement all this based on these 5 factors. It's strategic, the BIM use, and the process, and the data structure, which is unit class information, and the infrastructure, which consists of hardware and software. So on 2018, which is around 9% there. We have no process there, we hardly have any BIM use, we have no strategy of the implementation, don't know anything about data structures, and the infrastructure was there. Ciaran purchased the Autodesk suite. So at today, we measure again, we increased by 51% by implement those simple basic structure there. Now this is online self-assessment. Everyone can do it. They have choice of a big list of questions. They will give you a statistic on this. Now what we're lacking is on the data structures because our client is not asking for it. And the BIM use, no one in our company and the projects, hardly people were using it, even we defined those in the project execution plan. Now we're moving on to the phase 3, which is the future. Yeah. So from the future, from point of view, from the technology point of view, I'm looking for data analysis and approaching to machine learning. And the management point of view, they want a robustness of process. So for those who don't know, the data analysis is basically we extract the information from the modeling, which we already have, and discover the useful information and support the management to have a better design decision making. So we're going to leveraging a Power BI software from Microsoft. Now this is a free software, everyone can go experiment with it. So how do we do it? So we're using a model checker from Autodesk. So model checker it can check all your naming convention, how all those things, but we are focusing on the data behind them. What's the warning in the model? What's the file size on the model, etc., etc. And you generate the reports. So for those, you can generate the report based on HTML file and Excel format. But if I present this report to Ciaran, he probably won't look at it because it's a bunch of text, and architects are a very visual person. So we need to bring a way to draw his attention by using a Power BI software. So we are implementing into this. So you give you the warning, you give you the file types of the format, how many elements you created, how many views you created. You can give you very simple monitor on those. Not just that, you can generate this report based on daily or weekly basis. So it gives you a trend, why the warning spike up in that particular time. So management can go in and look at it, what's happening there, why the warning going up. And not just that, we also turn the model data into visual data, and it's integrated into a project CDE. So what else we can do about Power BI? Well, we always send the PDF to a design to the client, but we want to find a new way of doing so. So I'm just going to play this. Sorry.
Might not work.
Sorry, I will show this on the YouTube website sent to everyone because it apparently doesn't work. Is it this one? Sorry, no. No, it doesn't work, sorry. I'm going to pass on to Ciaran.
Yeah, so the takeaway for us is, for small business, buildings take time to build. And the pace of technological change is frequently faster than the pace of buildings as they're built, designed, specified, and brought through site. And it may be easier with the resources of large business to have to resource a consistent update, but it's very difficult for smaller practice, and this has to extend to our engineering colleagues and our QS colleagues as well. By the time you finish a building and you have a body of data and you're starting to analyze the outcomes of that data, suddenly you find that 3 years have gone by and everything is new again, and that's a problem. So us as, I suppose, managing a practice and running a practice, we're looking for robustness of processes. We're looking for something that is solid, repeatable, applicable to the scale of projects that we're working on. Remember, in the Irish market, the triangle applies, and you had a triangle up on your screen. There are very few airports up there at the top, and museums and skyscrapers. We're kind of, the architects with a mortgage, and we're just doing good quality design work on the simple projects that our government want, that our private clients want. And there are lots of businesses exactly like ours. We may be fortunate to grow to a particular scale, and we're doing now quite complex and interesting projects, but we still have to keep the complexity of how we manage our information in this new method of delivering projects manageable for the resources that we have. So, yeah, more left. Oh yeah. So our 5-step approach, if you were to take anything from our experience, is that that we have 2 tranches. You try and keep simple and cheap how we're managing our information, not committing to third-party CDEs because we lose control. And as architects, we're the first usually the first to engage with the client. And so we have a tremendously both responsible and important position to direct which direction a project might go. The yellow one is focus on the people. We've been extraordinarily lucky in the young graduates that we have been able to recruit and hold. And the reason for that is we let them do it. We support them. They ask us to do things, they ask to broaden their base of their information. Sometimes it's to do with BIM and technology and drawing. Sometimes it's to let them do a separate qualification like a PSDP or an NZEB qualification or something that broadens their experience. And if you hold that and let them grow their own career in the practice, that's very, very helpful. Process and workflow appropriate for the scale of the project. And something that is difficult in public procurement is trying to work with a familiar team, working with the same engineers, working hopefully sometimes with the same contractors. We've had really good contractors that are professional and interested, and you're just desperate. I wish we could just keep building with you. And there's got to be scope for assisting that to happen. And leveraging our institutes. I'm quite disappointed that there's so few architects here. And the institute, the RAI, is not here. And I think there's a real role for all of the institutes. The engineers are here, the QSs are here, but our institute is not. And this stuff is not getting taught in some of our universities. And I think it's a gap. And I think it is to the detriment of the architectural graduates. Technologists seem to be all over this aspect of the business. That's it. Thank you. I hope it's of use.